Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled neighbor constantly trespassed on my farm property and hosted illegal barbecues on my land. This stupid person ended up driving her car into my lake and then called the cops on me when I caught her and refused to help her. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. So I had a run-in with a Karen that I swear was more insane than other ones. I own a farm and I deal with my fair share of Karens that think my land is a bunch of things. The biggest one being some tourist attraction where they can take their kids to have fun and see animals. I know some farms allow things like that, but for me I just have too much experience and dangerous equipment to let kids run around. When I tell entitled parents like that no, they tend to go all Karen on me. Those are pretty boring and tame stories though. I want to tell you something more unique. My farm is one of the only big open lands in my area, so I get a lot of propositions for people wanting to give me money to rent out some of the empty space. They wanna do things like camp or hold a big activity. I always tell them they cannot, and most people understand, but even then I wish they wouldn't. Now, I just want you to keep in mind for this story that a farm is a big piece of property, and if something is going on at one end of it, I might not know if I am on the other side. Karen took it upon herself to not bother asking before deciding that she could use my land for some big barbecue party with their friends. Now, the thing is that I was on the other side of my farm, and if not for what I want to call an act of God, they would have left without me knowing and gotten away with the entire thing. What got my attention was the raging sound of car alarms and then screaming. I got on the tractor and went over to see what the hell was going on because nobody was supposed to be on my property. I did not even have farmhands that day, so I knew it could not have been them. So I went over to the small lake on my land and find that right in the middle of it is a car, and Karen swam out of the door and was paddling back to land. Her friends were all standing at the edge screaming, and I could see at least 2 more cars that were parked on my property. I could see she was fine, so with the emergency out of the way, I could not hold in my rage any longer. Me, what the hell do you think you're doing on my land? You drove a car into my lake. Karen, I should be the one yelling at you. You did not put up a fence or anything around the pond. I could have died and now my car is destroyed. Me, lady, I don't give 2 craps about your car. Get the hell off my property now. What were you even doing here? Another woman, having a barbecue, duh. Also, you might want to go and check the grilling area. The embers kept catching the grass on fire. Me, leave now and never come back. Now all the women were drunk and I could hear Karen yelling about calling the police, but I had already driven away. I was scared about the comment the other woman made and wanted to go find where they were. I found their barbecue spot where I could see the grass burned in some parts and knew none of these women knew what they were doing. They could have easily set fire to my entire farm with their drunken carelessness, which is one of my many reasons I don't allow people on my land. They also left the grill and I have no idea what they expected me to do with it. I went back to see what they did and they actually called the police, who were now taking statements from all the women. Policeman, is this your farm, sir? Me, yes, and I didn't give them any permission to be here. I want them off my land now. Karen, officer, I want him arrested for destroying my car. It's not my fault you decided to try and drive drunk and did not notice a lake in front of you. Police, you were the one driving? Yeah, we finished eating and now we wanted to go home. Then he came over and started yelling at us for it. Policeman, so you admit that you all came onto this property without the knowledge of the owner. You proceeded to have a barbecue where you got intoxicated and then got behind the wheel of your car with the intent to go home, right? Karen, yes, now arrest him for destroying my car with his stupid lake. He's gonna be buying me a new one if the engine does not work anymore. Karen did not get what she wanted obviously and seemed truly shocked that she was arrested instead. All 3 of them were arrested for trespassing, but Karen got a little bit extra. Since she was the only one they could prove was driving, she was hit with a DUI, which has the potential for being serious. It even got worse from there when he ran her license, since he then found out that it was suspended because of a different DUI she got. The other 2 women trespassing did not interest him nearly as much as Karen and what she was getting up to. Karen is actually somebody that I know before and is hard to miss around the area. She is a little bit infamous and banned from a few places in town already. I was not shocked to hear that she had a DUI, but I was more interested in getting her car out of my lake and her off my property. The lake was not deep so they could tow it out, but they needed a special tow truck and it was not gonna be cheap. I was worried they were gonna ask me to pay for it, but the officer assured me that the bill was gonna go straight to Karen. I could tell right away that her car was destroyed and probably not gonna run again without a ton of work being done on it. I waited around for her threat of trying to make me pay for it, but it never ended up happening. The other two women, once sober, came over to my house with baked goods to apologize and explain what happened before I came on the scene. Karen had told the two women that she rented a piece of my farmland for a barbecue and they could have a great time without having to worry about neighbors calling in a noise complaint. They were too drunk to fully understand what was going on after I caught them, but once they sobered up and learned the truth, they felt bad. I don't know how much of their story is true, but I want to believe it since they don't really seem to like Karen either. I accepted their apology but told them that I didn't want to find them coming onto my property anymore, and if somebody tells them it is rented, they are lying. As for Karen herself, she of course never came to apologize, but I'm sure in her mind the entire thing is my fault. I did hear that she still doesn't have a valid license, so she cannot buy a new car, and her ex-husband is not gonna help her get one. If she ever sets foot on my land again though, I'll not hesitate to call the police and make sure she gets in trouble again. And yeah guys, I gotta say, it is just incredible nowadays how entitled and stupid people can be. It seems like after the pandemic, people are even more entitled than ever before. Maybe for certain Karens there was a lot of entitled behavior built up during the pandemic because they couldn't harass people and now they have to let it all out. That's how I would explain this situation. Either way, if you enjoyed the story, please don't forget to like the video because that would help me tremendously. Anyway, the next one is titled Amazingly Stupid Karen. Okay, so I have a fun job. If you've ever been to a Color Me Mine, we are the mom and pop shop equivalent. Basically, you come in and paint bisque and we fire them to create ceramics that you get to take home. There are many days where this job is rewarding and other days that it causes heartbreak. Such as learning about a recent marriage or about a recent miscarriage. Altogether, it's rare for us to get a bad customer and we get to know them on a personal level. So when a sour customer does come in, well, they should be aware that we never forget. They are not in a giant pool of lousy customers like what you may get at Walmart, they are in a tiny handful that we can easily pick out. So if you go to a small quaint shop, try to leave a good impression. But anyway, during all of September and the beginning of October this year, this was recent, we had all of our Halloween bisque half off. This was so we could cycle through stock and put out new ones quickly. We advertised it as a fun treat for Halloween and people ate it up. Except of course one woman, which as you would assume must be named Karen. They came in and I did not hesitate to greet them as was a rule for our shop. Basically, we never let a customer hang out unless there was a line. It was Karen and 3 kids. 2 being her own and 1 was a friend. Like I said, you get to know these customers on a personal level and by the end you know who everyone is. So the most frustrating thing is that she appeared normal, a kind mother wanting to give some kids a good day. I explained how pricing works. I walked them to the Halloween items with signs on each of the shelves indicating they were half off. Then I let them know that I would give instructions when they've sat down. And those kids, they chose big items. Super detailed, tons of time to clean off the greenware kind. Greenware is the unfired clay state of the item, let's just say it's the reason the detail pieces get spendy. When they were settled, I waltzed over to their table and said something along the lines of, "Wow, those are some big pieces you've got there. I would like you guys to know that the items on these shelves," I indicated to some medium-ish bisque that kids tend to paint, take about an hour and a half to paint. With that in mind, are you okay with painting these today? They are also more of our expensive pieces. I spoke directly to the mother at this point and re-emphasized how the pricing works, but more importantly, how much time would be spent. Karen said she was fine with it, she was aware that they could bring back the bisque one more time without paying a studio fee. So then I gave instructions and let them at it, except they finished in an hour and a half. That always worries me too. It is their choice, their money, they'll be buying the piece, but it's always a tad disappointing to see an intricate piece be adorned with a mix of muddy colors formed into a strange marbling look. But of course, the kids had fun. And that is what matters in the end. I had the bill ready for them afterwards. It was well over $100 and we are the cheapest shop in the area or anywhere. Usually it's around $30 for 3 people. I tell her the number and this Karen says, no. It should be half that. I am taken aback and I look down at my paper and at the painted bisque on the table. A giant dragon, a tall fairy, and a large gnome welcome sign, each basically the size of my torso. I'm sorry if I did not explain the prices well. There are two prices because some people buy just a bisque and don't paint here, and Karen interrupts as it goes. No, they are Halloween items. They are all half off, right? Oh, I'm sorry if I didn't explain this properly. This wall that I showed you has all of your Halloween stuff. The shelves with the signs on them, your children grabbed from the fairy garden and fantasy sections. They don't have the deal. If need be, we can set up payments for you. I would not want to drain your wallet because I didn't explain properly. But they are Halloween items. What? I asked, clearly dumbfounded. Karen then said, I view them as Halloween items. You see, the dragon is scary like a Halloween monster, and the gnome greets the trick-or-treaters. They are Halloween items, hun. Hun? Hun? Really? This lady, this Karen, had 4 shelf cases worth of things to choose from that were half off. No, not 4 shelves, she had the entire cases. There was well over 75 bisque her kids could have chosen if they wanted something half off. What's more, a good amount are as big and detailed as these items. I said, no, that's not how it works. And by the way, I don't appreciate you assuming such without asking me. I really don't like making my customers unhappy, but in this case I cannot give you a deal. The bisque right next to the price literally says no discounts. That's how it is for all pieces that are this size, besides the actual Halloween wall. Well, Karen sneered. Let me speak to your manager then. I guess she didn't notice that I was the only one working during a super busy night. Not many employees are allowed to do that alone, so I said the title my boss gave me, I'm the studio art director. I am in charge, the website, all social media, pictures, the kiln, the items, customers, greenware and slip. I can do anything the boss can as I'm her second her. And if you want to, you can take it up with the boss, but she is even more blunt than I am. Moreover, I'll be fired if I make everything half off. At that point, the other customers began listening in. It's amazing how much of a conversation someone will miss when they are focusing on painting. However, they sure began listening when the worker is getting frustrated, and Karen noticed it too, and her know-it-all stature fell. She did not say another word, just flicked out her card and I put on my smile again. Please sign here. Thank you, it will be ready in 7 to 10 days. Also, thanks for coming in, your kids did such a great job. Have a wonderful day. Not another word slipped from her that entire time, just a constant dirty look as I played the kind manager. I had to go to the back and calm down though. I'm not good with confrontation, and what's more, when I was younger, I had some major anger issues. And also there are times that I can tell that they begin to resurface and I have to shove them back down. So with my mix of social anxiety and anger, I become a mess. Basically like 2 halves of different versions of me want to emerge, and yet I still cannot get over the fact that my shop is cheap. That we had a wall filled with discounted items and she still had the audacity to send us in the hole, as we would have made nothing in return if they were half off. And the next one is titled Insanely Stupid Karen. So many years ago in a previous life, I was an investigator in a robbery/homicide/vice section of the organization. I had a partner, Karen, whom I worked well with for the preceding year. I had been warned about her backstabbing behavior in other sections, but I foolishly ignored it. Leading up to the incident, she had been assigned 3 child exploitation cases that all she had to do was confirm the facts of the case, and she would have probable cause to obtain warrants. In spite of my reminders to perform the tasks, she waited until the 11th hour and then went on vacation without having completed the tasks. So I did it for her. She could now go to a judge without further action. When she returned, she was livid and accused me of stealing her work. I said if she had done that for me, I would have bought her lunch. From that point on, our professional relationship deteriorated, and I recalled the warnings I was given about Karen that mirrored my experience. A couple of months later, our idiot supervisor mistakenly assigned Karen and I the same case. I made contact with members of the task force and spoke with the officer who originated the case. Karen overheard my last conversation and blew her stack, saying words to the effect of, "You're stealing my work again, I was assigned that case. You're trying to make me look bad." I calmly explained that the idiot supervisor assigned me the case and I showed her the paperwork. She would have none of that though. I even offered to buy her breakfast and talk it out, but she told me to F off and added, "You don't do anything on my case without my permission, do you understand?" So I relinquished the case. For the next month, Karen tried to throw me under the bus for anything and everything, going into the idiot supervisor's office and complaining about me. I would get called into the idiot supervisor's office for a 16-minute coffee break or other such nonsense. Well then, a triple homicide case came down the pipe and she wanted it bad, schmoozing the idiot supervisor to give her the case. Rather than ask me personally, she had the idiot supervisor approach me to do the forensics portion. I told him that I was told not to do anything on her case without her sewer permission, and I didn't want to get in trouble or upset her, so I was gonna need permission for everything in writing before I did it. I need permission to pack the forensic kit. Exactly how many paper bags, plastic bags, etc., how many markers, how many swabs? I would need her written permission to enter even the crime scene. How many entry photos? And what distance? And how would I collect each piece of evidence? And how would I label them? I told the idiot supervisor to make sure she understood that, because I was not gonna do anything on her case without her permission. He then scurried off and then returned a short time later and told me that she didn't want the case and that it was mine. And yeah, ripe stars, clearly this man is an absolute genius when it comes to malicious compliance. If you were ever able to apply malicious compliance in your own life, especially in your workplace, then please let us know in the comments if you are willing to share the story. To those who don't know me, I'm a mix of Cherokee, Blackfoot, Jew, and my sweetheart of a son is half African American. I lived life on a high-octane, caffeine-overloaded, sleep-deprived candle burned at both ends edge. Because I held a specialized universal nursing license that allowed me to travel different states and countries, most countries that is, I could always gain employment almost anywhere worldwide. Now, I was a member of a world-renowned rescue/first response organization, and part of agreeing to be on the active unit, one had to be willing and able to relocate at a moment's notice. Depending on the relocation requirements, this could mean relocating home. This is a tale of one of those moves, a tale of woe and fear that would make Edgar Allan Poe truly green with envy and his raven turn its feathers from ebony to pea green ivory. We had replanted to a north/western part of our little world 3 years prior. Now, this particular part of the world would be snowbound sub-zero temperatures, most times into the -20s, because we basically had just 2 seasons, 3 summer months and 9 months of 6 to 10 feet of snow. No complaints on our side. My son was by then a child of 6 years and took to the snow like an Eskimo. By then I had been a widow for a few years, would take my double-skied crotch rocket to and from work in the winter months. When the teething chains would get pulled off the gears, I would have to play fix-it man, and on those times I would come home caked in snow, ice and gear oil. Getting a new man of the house was still out of the question for me. Freedom, sweet freedom. One day my rescue unit notified me I would be given a bump up and a reassignment. Yahoo! No more human popsicles. I was made lieutenant colonel and made a regional lead instructor. Great, more work and more responsibility. I made a mental note to buy stocks in all major coffee companies and search for doctors willing to give me daily infusions of that sweet aromatic liquid black gold. We had our lives packed into a long bed semi in 3 days, new school arranged for my sweet son, and new hospital floor position waiting for me. We awoke to the first kisses of the new day's sun, rolled up our sleeping bags and walked out of what was once a house we called home to 5 feet of freshly fallen snow. The cursing I committed that morning would have made the most jaded of sober sailors on shore leaf blush with seafoam green envy. We managed to pull out around 10 AM after bench pressing 5 tons of snow. By then, most city main streets and highways were plowed. We pulled onto the highway and put a few hundred miles behind us when we had to pull into a wait station. After the officers cleared my CDL, insurance and trip documents, I asked them about the state of the pass. This pass would chew up gears on empty semis, and the thought of having to deal with snow and black ice with a full-loaded semi had me nerved. I didn't want to blow the cab up or run it into the ground. We put a few hundred more miles past us. That pass was then a couple hours ahead. We pulled into a greasy spoon to fuel up and grab a few bites of myocardial infarction, inducing puddles of gloopy sludge that resembled burgers and cheese fries. And by the way, Ripe Stars, now I just noticed what this style of writing reminds me of. Maybe I'm completely wrong here, but for some reason it really reminds me of the book On the Road by Jack Kerouac. Anyway, as we were chewing, I noticed 8 salt licks rolling towards that grate from hell. I thought to myself, great, that salt came from the angels above to sprinkle grainy salty gifts. They were massive dump trucks that would generously sprinkle a mix of sand and rock salts on risky sections of roadways. So we pulled out to follow those blessed beasties with salty wings down that pass. Funny how it seemed everyone else read my mind. We managed to roll out of winterized zones in one piece after days of miles and miles. We rolled through plains, roads that cut through acres of plowed over farmlands, etc. Our truck engine started showing signs of having caught a cold with coughing and sneezing and clearing its throat. We pulled into a truck stop that had an in-house mechanic. He said he would once over it for me while we grabbed some heart attack chow. Mechanic said he couldn't find anything wrong, that maybe it is just me hearing things. Annoyed with his insinuating I didn't know anything and didn't know what I was talking about, I called the company I rented the semi from and put the decision to stay put or roll on them. They talked with the mechanic for a bit and then told me the truck was fit to roll. I asked them if they were sure, they said yes. Okay, we rolled on our way. Around 5 PM that same day, we had smoke billowing out of our smokestacks and a gritty roaring sound suddenly start out of our engine. I pulled over to a safe spot on the side of the road, pulled the hood and set out flashers. I called for a semi-tow to the nearest semi-repair shop after notifying the rental people of the breakdown. After the mechanic told me the catalytic converter blew up, he asked me if the engine made sputtering or lurching noises earlier. When I explained to him the entire story of earlier that day, he shook his head and muttered how he hated men pretending to be mechanics. He called the rental and explained the situation to them. After putting them on hold, he asked if I put regular gas in the truck. I said no, and he asked if I had any way to prove it, because they are saying you are responsible for the breakdown. After I gave him all the refueling receipts, the mechanic told the rental place I hadn't and that I only had diesel fuel receipts. They then made him go receipt to see if consumption met mileage, and it did. They then tried to claim that I ran the engine into the ground and I should have just pulled over at the first sound of problems. They denied that I did just that and even denied them telling me to roll even though I said the engine was making noises. When I played back the call to them earlier that day, my cell was government issued and automatically recorded all calls to them. They finally relented to coverage under contract. This mechanic smiled at me and told me that I was a tricky lady. Rental ended up having to arrange for a new semi for us as this shop was in the middle of nowheresville and lost town and didn't have the right parts to get us up and rolling in time, as shipping the parts in would take weeks. I had to make the East Coast and had 9 days left to do it. On the road again, happy to be on the road again. In my best singy-songy voice, we rolled on down the highway, the 9 of us. And yes, 9. What I haven't mentioned to you, my dear readers, is when I say we, I meant the whole family, as in 2 weenie dogs, 2 cats, each had 22 toes, and 3 parrots, each in their mobile cages, all stuffed into the sleeper of a 2-seater cab. We were Noah's Ark in a sardine can. And now, my dear readers, we were all tired of the travel, the miles driven, the greasy chow, the poor sleeps, and even more tired by thinking of the miles we still had to go. We are down to 4 days, almost there. We just had to keep pushing those miles on. We pulled into a fueling truck stop a couple cities over from a city famous for its bottled hardcore liquor. And by the way, guys, I am wondering what kind of city that is, because I cannot really think of any American city that has the same name as a popular liquor. If you know what OP is talking about, then please let me know in the comments. Anyway, as I climbed out of the cab to pump, my CAG, out of her frustration of being held a prisoner, let out a loud, help me, oh won't somebody help me?" I chuckled and shut the door and went in to unlock my pump. As I was walking back to my truck, the trucker in the fueling bay next to me glared at me. I sighed and just started fueling. After I filled both tanks, I went in to pay. The checker looked nervous and distracted, her hands shook and she kept looking around. I wasn't really sure what was going on. I was so tired, everything just went over my head. When she said the register was jammed, I asked her if she could pay me out on another register. She said they were all closed. She spent a ridiculous amount of time fiddling with the register. A man suddenly came up and whispered something into her ear. She smiled at me nervously and cashed me out, gave me my receipt, wow, it suddenly worked again, and sent me on my way. When I walked up to my semi, both it and I were surrounded by police, guns drawn. They were screaming orders at me to get on the ground face down with my arms extended out. I was cuffed and searched. I could hear my son screaming, "I want my mommy," over and over. I was sat on the raised step of the pumping station 2 bays over from my truck. An officer kept demanding to know where I had taken the child from. I kept telling them he was my son. They kept telling me to tell the truth, that he is obviously not my son, that he was black and I was white. And by the way guys, apparently these cops did not finish high school. Anyway, the cop then said that they received a report from someone claiming they heard a child screaming for help out of my cab. That funny how they found a child in my cab. I finally jolted out of my dazed fog and put the pieces together. I tried explaining it was my cat, not my son, who screamed. I tried reasoning with them how I was a nurse and was with a government rescue team trying to relocate to my new assignment. Nothing I said seemed to help. They stuffed me into the back of a squad car. I sat there stewing with anger, frustration and disbelief. An eternity passed when a semi-tow truck pulled up. They huddled to discuss how they would get the semi out of the bay to hook it up. While they were still talking, I heard one officer tell another to pull the animals out of the cab and he will have animal control pick them up. I then watched in horror as another squad car drove away with my son. I felt then that my entire life was over. I watched in tears as a cop climbed up into the cab when suddenly I heard my cat scream, "Help me, help me, help me! Oh, won't somebody help me?" That cop jumped backwards out of that cab, stumbled onto his ass and started laughing so hysterically he almost weed himself. The trucker who was in the bay next to mine screamed, "See, I told you there's a child in there calling for help." An officer asked him if that's the same child's voice he heard from before. He affirmatively answered yes. The officer who was running things ordered the squad car with my son in it to return. I'm creating new rivers, bawling my eyes out. As I was sobbing tears, I was forced to stand near the front of the squad car. I watched as I saw my son roll slowly past me, screaming for help. When the squad car stopped and they let him out, my son ran to me and wrapped his little arms around me. Long story short, I got my son back, my freedom back, and was told we were free to go on our way. They called it just a misunderstanding, no hard feelings, okay? Yeah, okay, dolts. I said I would never put this city's hardcore liquor to my lips, and I haven't to this day. 3 days later, we pulled into the city I was assigned to when my son asked, "Are we there yet?" I laughed, cried, and then laughed some more. Yes, sweetheart, we have arrived. I explained to my son many years later what actually happened that day, and we still laugh about it. And also, my cat still calls out for help when I force her to shower. Mental note, never ever teach a parrot to say help me for any reason, no matter how funny I think it might be. Either way, thank you so much for listening today. I would very much appreciate it if you could post some star emojis in the comments and maybe even like the video if you want to support me. Lately, it seems like that YouTube is really recommending channels where people comment a lot, so just fire away. It would really help me. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.